Hey, folks, you're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hendricks. Your time is valuable. I'm not going to waste it, so let's get right to the interview. Today, we have Tracy with us, and I'm excited about this one because Tracy works with coffee. And anytime I get to talk about coffee, drink coffee, watch coffee videos, I'm all for it. So, Tracy, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, let's go ahead and start off like we always do. Give us a snapshot of where were you born, your upbringing, and just go from there.
Okay. Born and raised Stott City, Mount Vernon area. I lived in Stott City, or farm raised. Graduated high school from Mount Vernon, Missouri. Mount Vernon High School. Do you want college and stuff like that? Everything from
Sure.
here? Okay.
Yeah.
So, graduated. I ran track when I was in high school and got recruited by West Point. So
Mm.
spent my freshman year at West Point. I'm kind of a hippie at heart, so West Point wasn't really up my alley. It was one of the things that I felt like I needed to do it. Loved that I did it. Liked all of the physical aspects, but I'm not an engineer, which is what you graduate from there with. So, spent my first year there, came back, went to my sophomore year at University of Missouri, Columbia, and then spent my junior year abroad studying at Keble College in Oxford and the University of London. Got a
Oh,
bunch of
wow.
Englishy type stuff there, and then came back, did my senior year at University of Missouri, graduated from there, and then kind of decided that I needed to see more of the world. And from
Wow.
there, kind of left, graduated with a degree in English, British literature emphasis, and then I left, went to Colorado, worked at bump chairs, did some living there, ended up in Montana, and that's when I got the coffee, kind of started my role into the coffee world.
What was your first step into the coffee world?
So coffee shops were not around like they are now, way back when. So in my senior year of college, there at University of Missouri, they had a little coffee shop just off of the main drag there in Columbia. And so that was my first kind of steps into specialty coffee, if you will, like having lattes, espresso based drinks. Um, and then from there, I loved it, enjoyed the process, did not work there, but started drinking coffee at that point. And then when I had graduated and went to living in Colorado, and then further on into Montana, I I got a job at a coffee shop, and it was actually a coffee shop and a roastery. I was in I was living in Kalispell, Montana, and they had a coffee shop there, but they had a roastery just down the road in Whitefish.
Mm.
And so that's kind of where I started working with coffee. Was there at It was called Montana Coffee Traders. It is still there,
Mm.
and they're going great guns. But it was just a kind of a cowboy hippie Montana coffee roastery coffee shop, and I absolutely loved it.
That's a beautiful part of the country. My family took a vacation there a few years ago to Glacier and everything. We stayed in Kalispell, and that is, if I could live almost anywhere, I think I'd pick that
I
spot.
am Yes, and just the world is beautiful. The people are awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of runs the gamut, which I kind of like about here. Coffee can be a little intimidating
Hmm.
because the world has made it that way in the last 20, 30 years. But both here where we are in the Mount Vernon area and then up there in the Kalispell Whitefish area, it's just good people, good that they like what they like, and it's not pretentious or
Hmm.
anything kind of crazy like that. Love it. Love that part of the world.
Did you lean towards the roasting side or the making of the beverages side, or did you just like all of it, all of the above, or?
So I like coffee. And I don't necessarily trust people who don't. I just don't know how that can be, how you can
Yeah.
be functioning without a little bit of caffeine in the morning. But so when I was working there, I was in retail on the retail side. So I was making drinks, and I was actually managing that Kalispell shop that they had.
Okay.
But my husband now, but not at the time, he was a coffee roaster there. And so that's kind of the coffee roasting end of things as that transpired.
So
So
you
he was a
guys
roaster, I was a retailer.
you got together over a coffee bean. That was the
Mhm.
what brought you together. Okay. The something
Yes,
you said a second ago that the world has made coffee way more complex. I forget how you worded it exactly, but intimidating. That was how you said it.
yes,
I remember growing up, I'll be 51 this year, and coffee when I was a kid was, Folgers or Maxwell House or whatever the diner had, and you didn't put all kinds of fancy things in it, maybe cream or sugar, and that was it.
right.
Now you have coffee machines, espresso machines that are thousands of dollars, grinders that, can be $700-800 on up. What
Yes,
is that
yes.
just a what is that? Is there really a difference and maybe I just don't have the palate for it?
So no, so coffee in and of it, there's so much to learn,
Yeah,
and I'm kind of geeky about it,
it
but
is neat.
it is neat. There's a lot of science behind it, but
Yeah.
the world I don't even know who they is, but the world has tended to take something it's simple and kind of made it scary. And we always say, tell me what you like, and chances are I can make you something that you like. Or if you're just a black coffee drinker, tell me what you like, and I bet you I can find a coffee that we roast that will make you happy. It doesn't have to be scary, and it can be, and we have people all of the time that, brewing to this temperature, and we weigh out our coffee when we're brewing it, but it doesn't have to be scary. So I just think that it's taking something that's very cool, and it's a trendy thing, and then they constantly have to kinda revamp that trend, so to speak.
Oh, the
So
new and latest
I'm
thing.
55, so we're right about the same age
Mhm,
age there. So we grew up with just the black coffee with cream or sugar in it, and
mhm.
then it's kind of that trend. Espresso's been around in Europe for years and years and years, but it just kind of made its way here. There, late 80s, early 90s, it was hitting there on the east and west coasts. And so it was definitely in Montana before it was here. That's how we moved back. My husband and I got married in Montana, and then he's from Texas. I'm from here. So when we wanted to kind of start making a family, we wanted to be closer to our families. So when we moved back here, there was nobody was roasting. There were no coffee shops. That was like,
Hmm,
mid 90s. So that's how we ended up going, okay, there's no decent coffee here, decent being fresh, because
mhm,
that Maxwell House Folgers, that it once you grind coffee, it starts to stale. So
mhm.
that stuff's been ground and sitting in that. There's no way to slow that process. So it's
Yeah.
kind of stale tasting. So that's the difference. So yeah, we wanted fresh roasted coffee, so we were like, okay, if nobody else is doing it, we'll buy a roaster, do it in our garage, and if nothing else, we'll have good coffee even if nobody else wants it.
How did you and I know your husband's not here to answer this question, but I'm sure you know. Your side as far as the making of the coffee and then what you know about the roasting and his roasting, were you both just kind of self-taught? You just learned it as you went along because you were passionate about it?
Yeah, so yes. Well, I mean, they trained us in the coffee in Montana Coffee Traders. He
Okay.
was trained on roasting, but there are now certifying bodies that,
Oh,
like, you can become a certified barista, a
okay.
certified roaster. Back in the day, back when we first started, that was not anything. I mean, if you found somebody who knew how to roast, that's how you learned how to roast. It was all apprenticing. And so he learned how to roast for them. They trained him, and then he was their roaster for years. And same thing for me. We made the coffees, and then we had espresso machines and made drinks. But more than anything, what we did there, because it's kind of a slow process with the the barista drinks, were not that big of a deal then.
Yeah.
It was slowly coming on, but it wasn't a cool thing yet. More than that, that we were selling coffee beans from different locations and fresh coffee. And for those people, that was that was new and different. And for somebody who's used to drinking Folgers and likes coffee, it makes a big difference, fresh coffee. We don't,
Hmm.
light roast, dark roast, there's this whole, like we said earlier, the science, but just fresh coffee tastes completely different than it just it's brighter. I don't even know the words to kind of give you. Are you a Folgers drinker?
Well, we drink it at the firehouse just because
Yeah.
that's everybody kind of caters it how they want it. But occasionally we'll bring in somebody will get Starbucks or Black Rifle Coffee
Uh-huh.
Company or, Coffee Depot Department, some of those different ones. So I don't know if those would qualify as higher end coffees or just variety
Sure.
coffees, but
They would be. Those are different. So like Folgers is going to be using there's Arabica beans and Robusta. Robustas grow at a lower altitude. They're cheaper and not as flavorful. And the
okay.
Arabicas are going to be any specialty roaster, Starbucks, Black Rifle, us, anybody who's roasting and kind of selling it in bags rather than the cans.
Okay.
Those are going to be Arabica beans, so they're going to taste better. And chances are those are still going to be fresher than what you're getting in that can. You just don't know how long that's been sitting there. And so it's just going to take, it's not going to be, it's going to take a lot more coffee to get a coffee flavor. And I find most of the time you're just drinking it for caffeine at that point, not
Yeah.
probably for flavor.
No, in the firehouse, every fridge has 2 or 3 different creamers, and
Yep.
pumpkin spice everything and all that. I just drink mine with a little splash of whipped cream, and that's it.
There you
Uh,
go. I'm a
or
black
black.
coffee drinker.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
Where do you where does coffee typically grow, and how do you go about getting beans from a quality supplier to then roast?
Okay. So it grows at a certain altitude and certain soil type. So there's one place in the US that grows coffee, and that's Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
Nowhere in the continental US, it just won't, it will grow. You can grow the plant and you may get a few beans. I mean, they're not beans, they're actually cherries that grow on a tree. But you may get a few cherries to grow, but not enough to ever harvest, because where the altitude is high here, it's too cold. So places like Hawaii, um, and then Central and South America, like, Brazil, Peru, Guatemala,
Mm,
that area of the world, African coffees. It's kind of all equatorial along
okay.
the equator. So and then Indonesia, African Indonesia, Central South America. I'm thinking through that pretty much
You're
covers
around the
it.
equator though, right? Plus
Yes.
or minus.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got some Indian coffees
Okay.
also. Yeah, so they grow, and they grow like on a bush, and it's a cherry, and I'm always amazed. The cherry, the pulp tastes disgusting. It's very bitter. And I'm always amazed how somebody took this bitter, they ate the fruit, it didn't taste good. They said, "Oh, what can I do with this seed?" You eat the seed, it doesn't taste good. Then they decided, "Oh, I'm gonna cook the seed," and you still don't wanna eat that roasted bean, that's still not gonna taste good. So then they ground it up, mixed it with water. It was just a process. Somebody really wanted to use really wanted to use that bean. So anyway, they had to want to do something with that coffee cherry/bean in order to make it into something.
Yeah.
to be able to use it. So um, it's been a wild ride for coffee. And
Do
then
you,
you asked where do we get them? Like,
yeah.
how do you go about buying those beans? So you buy them green. We get them in 100 to 150 kilo bags, so about 100 pounds, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And it's a commodity. So we have brokers that we utilize. So it trades on the stock market. I don't fully understand the way that any of that works, but the prices they call the C market, and that determines different prices of different coffees. And so we
Hmm.
have brokers that we deal with. Most of them are on the coasts, so like
Sure.
New Orleans. You'll get some in New York. Um, Most of the ones that we use are on the West Coast, like out of San Francisco area.
Okay.
So call brokers, get prices. They're constantly changing. The prices are, and then they will kind of. We have people that we trust that they cup the coffee, so they know they get a batch in. They will roast it there, taste it, and then they can kind of give you a little bit of a description and kind of know what you're
Okay.
buying. So you kind of build a good relationship with your brokers.
How much do you buy at a time? Are you getting like semi truck loads, or is this a FedEx guy, or what's the?
No, it's, pallets usually. So it kind of depends on the time of year. When we first started out, we were buying one bag took us, months to go through, and now we get pallets of 12 bags or so, and we get, a pallet a week sometimes.
Okay.
So we because we roast for ourselves, but we also wholesale our coffee.
Oh, okay.
So we kind
How
of
mu-
sell to other coffee shops.
how much can you typically roast at one time? I'm assuming you have one or multiple roasters or industrial size roasters.
Yep. So we use a fluid bed roaster, which is different than the most common way of roasting is a drum roaster, which
Okay.
the way that works is these are the ones that you kind of see that you see on TV or something. Everything is kind of contained inside of a unit, and it works kind of like a clothes dryer. So the
Okay.
beans kind of tumble
Okay.
within this, and then you dump them out and they cool down. Ours works kind of like a hot air popcorn popper. Fluid bed means that the beans are not coming in contact with any surface. So it kind of blows underneath, blows and heats them, and they kind of blow through the air. And so we
Uh,
like it better because we feel like it gets more of an even roast. It's not doesn't get hot spots because it's not touching the hot side of the roaster. So we started out and we had a 9 pound roaster. That's what so it was the most you could roast was 9 pounds at a time. That's what we started out with. And I think that it's a 30 pound roaster.
hmm.
That's my husband and my son are the ones who are roasting for us now, and so generally around 20-ish pounds is what they're roasting, somewhere around that. You throw you It loses weight, so if you put 20 pounds in, you're going to get 17, 18 pounds out. It kind of depends on the level of the roast.
Just that's the moisture content that would
Yep.
account for the. Okay. All right.
Yep, exactly.
So you've roasted it. I'm assuming these are the ones I've seen where it dumps out and then it's on a table and it has an arm that spins around and it's helping to evenly cool the beans.
Yes.
What?
That's like a drum roaster. Ours, we hand stir them, but it's the
uh,
same concept. It's a pulling air through it to cool it down.
Now I may be getting out of my lane a little bit here, but what little I know about coffee roasting, you're going for, is it cracks, first crack, second crack,
Yes.
and that's the
And
darkness that you
temperature.
want?
So
And
yeah, it
okay.
used to be that you kind of relied on the crack. So when my
Oh,
husband first started roasting, you it was hard to measure the temperature, that because we technology wasn't there. So you relied on the crack and you relied on the visual of how dark those beans are looking. And that's the science, but also the uh, it's nuanced, that it leaves a lot to the roaster. Well,
Okay.
now you've got they've the roaster that we have now has a probe in that kind of goes in almost like a thermometer that lives in where the beans are circulating, so you've got a constant read on what the temperature is there. So they're going by the crack, but they're also able to watch the temperature as it's roasting. And so they know they when a new coffee comes in, every every harvest, they everything kind of roasts a little bit differently. It's the same way, cooking a steak, you've got the or cooking anything. You've got the way that you normally do it, but then you have to fall back on every cut of meat. It's going to be different, so it's not going to be exactly the same every time. So it's a process where you're listening to the crack, looking at the temperature, and then that is like the difference between French roast and espresso. You could use the same beans. French roast is going to be slightly lighter than an espresso roast. In our world, we have a Pan Am blend, a French roast, and an espresso. Exact same beans. It's the level of roast that is determining the flavor.
A lot of that comes from experience, just knowing when
Yeah.
it's where you want it. So,
Right. But see, it's also one of those things that kind of goes back to the scary thing, is that not everybody likes a dark roast.
mhm.
And the same kind of a thing like an African bean, they're kind of, because there's less water in Africa and their soil structure is different, um, that African beans are generally kind of winey, almost fruity with a
Hmm.
flavor, even though it's not a flavored coffee, but you kind of get a fruity front to it. Whereas like a Guatemalan generally will have like kind of a chocolatey or more nutty, and it's going to be a little more mild. So that that is person to person. Like I love all kinds of coffee, but I like a dark roast first thing in the morning. And then I love those African coffees. I just don't like them first thing in the morning because they seem to have more acidity. And I
Okay.
like the dark kind of smoky flavor of a dark roast in the
Do
morning.
the do those flavor profiles and things, is that something that you can only gain just by experiencing different kinds of roasts and learning? I don't think I have a sophisticated enough palate. If someone said this one has chocolate undertones or this one is nutty or spicy, it just tastes like coffee to me and I like it. But
Yes. So a lot of times, I mean, you kind of have to be sitting there with your eyes closed to kind of pick up those notes.
okay.
And even, to be honest, even the most oh sophisticated palate, I would say, um very very subtle. and
Okay.
and sometimes they kind of come up with more. There's so many things going on, I'm like, I'm not really sure that you can pick all of that up. I mean, like, I could tell you, we have a Yurga chef, which is it's an African coffee, and I could make it for you, and I could give it to you, and it has like a blueberry it's kind of got that berry flavor. You would pick it up. Anybody would be able to pick up that flavor note in there. Those are the ones that or if I gave you my French roast, you would say, it kind of tastes like tobacco-y, almost without being negative, kind of like an ashtray. You would pick up that smoky flavor in it. And you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a sophisticated palate. You would be able to taste those two. And so for me, for someone that's trying to not make coffee complicated or scary, is wanting it to be approachable for everyone and not make you feel like you're something's wrong with you because you're not picking up vanilla and pepper and all of this in there. That's where I go, I what do you like? But and then that's what I want you to that's what you should be drinking. But I know that you would be able to pick up, like, these differences. I could put them side by side, and you'd be like, "Oh, heck yeah, I totally know what you're talking about."
I
That
think
is
I could
blueberry.
I could talk with you about coffee roasting and stuff all day long, but we went that was a fun rabbit hole. Let's go back to the business side of things.
Mhm.
So you have relocated back to Missouri. You are
Yes.
roasting. You have a shop, or you haven't got a shop yet.
No.
You're roasting. Walk
So
me
weird.
through the transition to get a shop going.
Okay. So we started roasting in our garage. We just kind of took a one-car garage and we're like, put the roaster in there. We had 3 kids, little ones at the time. Um, and started roasting, playing around with it, and then needed to have an outlet. So at the time, Mount Vernon was just starting like a farmer's market. This is right around 2000.
Okay.
Starting a farmer's market that was on the square on Saturdays. And so I would load up 3 kids and make a big thermos of coffee and put you know in Tupperwares. I had 6 different kinds of coffee that we had roasted for to sell, and then I started selling it by the pound at farmer's market in the summer. And that was the start of KeenBean. And then from there, when they stopped, September, October, they stopped doing farmer's market, people would call us at home and say, "Hey, can I pick up a pound of coffee?" So we were roasting, would run coffee to people, but it was very, very small scale. But as it was starting to kind of pick up, people were wanting more coffee, and it was growing, and we were like, "Oh, okay, I think we can make this happen." We had a car wash that sat empty for years in Mount Vernon, and my husband called me one day and said, "Hey, I think we can turn that car wash into a coffee shop." And I am the type of person that I have to move things. I'm very visual, so I can't really see it until it's kinda down the road. He can see it in his brain. Long story short, we kinda figured out a way to buy the car wash, and then we renovated it and turned it into what is now our OG, um, location, which is KeenBean Coffee Roasters, yeah. So that was the first shop, and we opened it May 5th of 2005. So this May is 20 years.
The coffee scene back then, it was kind of taken off, but it was still, is it fair to say it was in its infancy then?
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, from my folks, my dad was like, "Nobody's ever gonna pay $1.50 for a cup of coffee." And he
Yeah.
was Folgers all of the way,
Yeah.
farmer guy, and we were like, "Okay, well, we'll figure if that's the case, we'll figure something out." But, we think it's gonna work. But you're dealing with someone. My husband was a roaster, uh, before that, but has no college degree, and all of his studies were in, like, forestry. I have a degree in English. So from a business standpoint, I mean, I think that I personally think that that is what makes us good business owners, is that we haven't read all of the books, so we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. Rather, we're doing what feels like we should be doing, and when that's not working, we're changing. We're bobbing and weaving through the years to kinda figure out what that looks like.
The coffee, I always think back to my father-in-law when I first went. I mean, my wife grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Um, and I would go visit them, and my father-in-law would take me to the local donut shop in the little co-op town. And he would walk in and pick up his coffee mug that is up there on the counter, or a shelf, it's his,
Yep,
and go fill it, and it's 40, 50 cents for a cup of coffee. You move forward now and you go to Starbucks or some other place and it's 3, 4, $5 for a cup of coffee.
yep.
I read an article once that said that Starbucks was the big reason why the price of coffee is what it is now from a business standpoint. It's acceptable to charge more for a
Yes.
quality product.
They also, a lot of specialty coffee would probably poo-poo Starbucks, but they
Yeah,
got the word out.
right.
You know what I mean? They
Mhm.
when we were fledgling and, new coffee shops that people even like you were saying, the infancy, we know a lot of people had not had a latte, did not
Right.
know what those type of drinks were really, because at the time, there were no Starbucks in Springfield,
Mhm.
or Joplin. There were I think that you could get, I think that Mud House, which is in downtown Springfield, opened the same year that we did, maybe. And
Okay.
that was it. I mean, it just wasn't. So when they went somewhere else and they got a specialty coffee and they came back and they were able to get an espresso-based drink from us, that's kind of it's Starbucks is good. It has been good for the industry because it opened people's eyes and kinda made it, um, more common for people to they've tried it.
A lot of
But
people
when
wanna
we
kinda hammer on them because 'cause they're big corporate and they're
Yeah,
everywhere, but they're
yes,
not, they're not all bad. They do provide consistency,
yes.
globally. You're gonna get the same order here that you would in London if you order the same thing.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that if I'm driving, distances, you're wanting to get a decent cup of coffee on the road,
Sure.
and gas station coffee doesn't cut it. So I'm
No.
always gonna be looking for a somewhere I can get off and get a Starbucks or something like that,
Right.
because I know it's just gonna be fresher coffee. It's just gonna taste better than that stuff that you get at the gas station.
That begs the question, when you travel, do you like to try out little shops or smaller mom
Love
and pop?
it.
Okay.
Love it, love it, love it. Those are my local small is my that's my way to go. And I mean, we'll go to any coffee shop anywhere we go, buy pounds of coffee, bring them home with us.
Oh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
you're always sampling and always kinda
Yes. Oh, yeah,
okay.
and supporting. I mean,
Oh, sure.
it's hard in the world to make it as a small business owner.
Mhm.
So you wanna support that wherever you can.
So you've got your business, you bought the car wash, you've turned it into a coffee shop. Did
Yes.
you did you have some lean years there early on before it started to take off, or did you kinda gain traction quickly? How did the first maybe 5 years play out?
So here interesting, 'cause I said earlier, we wholesale coffee also.
Uh-huh.
So we had been approached when we were first roasting from our garage, had kind of set up a couple of coffee accounts that were small shops, Joplin area, that, like, they were food places, but they had espresso machines. So
Mhm.
we set up a couple of wholesale accounts. So not as much money in a wholesale account, but more quantity. So and it was an income. So when we opened the retail location, we had a couple of the wholesale accounts already. And we were pleasantly surprised. Not crazy busy. We had to have food. I would love to just be a coffee shop, but those are one of the things that in a small town, you kind of have to be diverse and you have to
Mhm.
have some other things because not everybody's a coffee drinker. So we had food. So that also helped. We did it ourselves. So that's the big thing is that we're not in the coffee shop as much now as we were, but man, oh man, we had, like I said, 3 kids and 4 by the time we opened the shop, and, my hu Daryl was working the mornings, and we would switch. He would come I had the kids, and then he would come home and watch the kids, and I would go
Good
in and work
grief.
the afternoons.
You pass each other in the hallway, give a little pass down,
Yes.
and
Did it for years and years, and I always laugh because kids will come in now, and we've got an office upstairs there at the coffee shop, and, will come and sit in the office, and they are like, I think it would be awesome." They that are wanting to open a coffee shop, and they want my job.
Hmm.
which I'm like, "You don't understand what what
Yeah.
the first 15 years of this business was. I wasn't sitting up here. The business end of things is happening after the coffee shop was closed because
Yeah.
all you were doing was waiting on people when it was open. So the first it was we were busy, but we loved it because we were doing what we liked and working for ourselves. But then 2008 hit, huge recession,
Hmm.
all big. So that was tight. We lost a lot of our wholesale customers. A lot of place coffee shops closed. And because we were doing it ourselves, we hung in there. And so it's been it's a roller coaster, I think, with most businesses. And if you could ever say, I've always said, if the customer base would just let me know when they're all gonna come, I could staff appropriately. But nobody's done it yet out of 20 years. You can't say every Monday is busy and every Friday is dead. It just it's a up and down wild ride, so
What you were talking about there a minute ago were the first, 10 to 15 years when you and your husband were with kids trying to grow a business, passing each other in the hallway.
yes,
That is the part of being an entrepreneur and running your own shop that a lot of people, it gets lost in the glamour of, hey, I own a business. Man,
right.
you're working 70 hours a week. You're working
Yeah,
late into the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you throw a family into it. That's the part that a lot of people don't realize is that grind. If you want to make it, that's the price you got to pay.
it is, and we homeschooled our kids,
Okay.
so they were there with us every step of the way. I mean, they were wiping down tables. At the time, my oldest was 10 when we opened, and youngest was newborn. She was born the first year that we opened.
Shoo.
So, yeah. But I would not trade it at all,
Yeah.
but it is a grind. And I don't though that's things have changed a lot in the 20 years. You don't see it seems like you don't see people willing to do that, families willing to do it. It was hard. It was
Your
hard.
your kids probably got a ton of life lessons and
You know,
things.
they all work with us now.
Oh,
So,
really?
yes, they've all gone
Okay.
away. My youngest is now 19. She hasn't gone away, but she lives on her own and works for me. But my older 3 have gone away, gone to college, done different things, and have come back, and my son is roasting. My oldest daughter is, kinda my buyer and general manager, and then kid number 3, daughter, is my shop manager.
Wow.
So, they've grown up around it. They know, um, they know our expectations, so they're my best workers, my very best workers because they've been working with us from the get-go.
They know every aspect of the business too because they grew up in it.
They're learning it. Now, don't
Okay.
tell them that. They think that they know every aspect of the
Well,
business.
sure, yeah.
But yes, they are involved more and more. They like it. I think that it's a good they would have never expected that they would be back there, but I think that they all do like being back there.
I've been in your location one time a number of years ago. You're about an hour and 10
Mhm.
minutes from me. Um, I don't recall if you sell equipment such as grinders and coffee machines and things, or are you just the food drink side of things?
We are food, drink. We have a small retail
Hmm.
area. I mean, we sell some French presses, but not there's just so many places that
Yeah.
you can buy that it's not something it's not we I just say, you can get a grinder, you can get equipment at
Hmm.
any Tom, Dick, and Harry and online. That's what COVID, if anything, that was the big weird of all of the years, COVID hitting and the dynamic that has changed after that. I mean, everyone shops online now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find everything online. So that it's a blessing and a curse, truly.
If you were if you were just starting out in your business, is there something that looking back that you would do differently? Or I find a lot of times when I ask that question, the answer I get is the mistakes that I made are what made us or me
Yes.
what we are. But there's got to be something that you look back and go, that wasn't the best, or I should have done this, and it would have accelerated the process.
Maybe, and we've changed this back. You're absolutely right. Every mistake, everything that we have done, and I'm not a big mistake person.
Mm.
I don't live with regrets. I think that everything you just learn from everything. So, and if it hadn't have happened, you not wouldn't have figured it out. But one of the things that's difficult is that you get when you're running a business, everybody tells you how you should be running it and what you should be doing. For example, people constantly wanted us to add to our menu, our food menu. And we also started out with every coffee that we roasted, we had in jars. And every blend we had in jars, and we did 20 different flavored coffees. And so we had a multitude, maybe 60 different varieties of coffee available to people. And we kind of looked at it and we're like, they don't all move at the same rate. So
Mhm.
we did that for years. And then when we took it down to smaller, we said, okay, we don't want stale coffee or old coffee sitting. So let's kind of consolidate this. After we did that, we had so many people come in and say, oh, you should have done this sooner, because I would sit and stare and become overwhelmed with my inability to make a choice and leave with no coffee because it was too much for me to decide. So you learn kind of as you go. And on the flip side of that, so we shouldn't have had so many choices when it came to coffee. On the flip side of that, right about the same time, we were listening to everybody's thoughts and ideas on expanding our food menu and expanded it out. And I don't know, we didn't learn from the coffee. We should have thought about the coffee, but we went bigger, and then we ended up going back smaller on that and focusing on what we do well. And so those are things that I wish I would have known sooner. I don't So obviously we changed them back. Um, but stuff like that, like listening to you have to listen to your customers, but you don't have to do everything that they tell you to do. You kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt, and you also kind of need to do what you do well and focus on that. Don't try to do everything mediocre.
Is there a temptation? It seems like as an outsider looking into a small business, I can appreciate there's a temptation to, I have to do this and then I got to do that and I got to do this over here and I got to diversify and I got to do that. And next thing you know, you're spread so thin, nothing's doing well. And you wish the whole time that you could have just stayed doing these couple of things
Yes,
that you're really good at.
it's maddening.
What
That
can you,
that is the hard part.
what's the, what can someone do? Is that a lesson that you just have to learn by doing it and
It
realizing
is.
it? Oh, okay.
You learn it over and over again. You learn the
Okay.
lesson and then you forget, because it's easy to get caught up in the next new thing and the next cool thing, or listening to what people are saying. And so you'll slip back in, and then you'll hopefully come back and be like, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm doing it again. I'm moving away from where I need to be and
Mm.
sticking with what I do, doing it well." So I relearn it. I mean, maybe I'm just hard headed, but I kind of just I get excited to add something on or do something different, and it's not always the best plan.
The financial side of things, I think a lot of folks like the idea of having their own business or operation. But the money, I think sometimes people focus on, like, I can do really well, and they don't factor in all of the expenses that go along with running a
It's
business.
terrible running a business because you see and I think that's another thing that businesses do. So, like, when we started out, we bought used equipment. We still, are our best espresso techs between and, work on a lot of our own equipment. Because if you're in Cassville, you don't have I mean, for you to pay for somebody to come down and work on anything there, you're gonna have a heck of a trip charge.
Yeah,
So, same
I do it
kind of a thing.
myself.
Yeah, that is exactly what we do. We do it
Yeah.
ourselves. Um, but I don't think that every business owner thinks that way.
Mm,
And those are so you do money is tight and you have to be thoughtful because what it feels like you've got a lot of money coming in. So it feels like you've got a lot of money coming in
mm,
because you see dollars. And so but it costs it just you have to wait. That money doesn't go as far as you expect. So I think a lot of people go, "Oh my gosh, I have all of this money," and they spend it way too easily as far as a business goes. The financial end is hard because most people start a business because they like to do a thing. We like to roast coffee,
mhm.
but we don't like to run a business. That gets and you have to be able to run a business if you wanna continue roasting coffee. So you learn it, if that
The
makes sense.
No, it does make sense, and it parlays perfectly into a pair of questions I always ask, which is, "What do you like most about your job?" Which I think I already know, and, "What do you dislike most about your job?"
I love the people, and I hate the people. It's not how about that?
I can relate to that. Yeah, that's a perfect answer. That is the
I
perfect answer.
absolutely love and I love being a part of a community. I'm geeky about coffee, um, but I we're just lucky to be 20 years. We get a lot you make friends and you have people who work for you that become like children, and those people that are coming, they're watching those children, it just is a family. It is a true I love the people and the relationships and what we get to do. We're a meeting and a greeting place.
Mhm.
So, loving the coffee side of things, but that part of my business, I it's my favorite part. But it also is also working with the public. There's some grumpy people out there,
Yeah, they haven't had their
and it
coffee yet.
doesn't matter what you do, they're still gonna be grumpy, and
Yeah.
that's hard because I take it personally.
Hmm. What what changes have you seen in your industry since you've been doing it? What are some big or are there any? I mean, coffee roasting has been around for ages and ages. So
Mhm.
is it at its core pretty much the same, except with maybe some shinier devices?
That's what yes. Yeah, and that is the part so technology has changed, it's allowed things to become more automated,
Mm,
which once again, blessing and a curse. It is it can sometimes go too fast, and that kinda goes back to where we were talking about it doesn't have to be that hard.
yeah.
So, it's why we still have a small roaster. We could buy a bigger roaster, but then you would lose and automate it more, but then you lose the nuances of the roasting, the ability to sit and look at it and know the color changes. The same thing goes we have our espresso machine is it you push the button to start the shot, you push the button to stop the shot, we tamp our own bayonets. So you still have a barista that is in control of what's happening rather than the machine doing it. You could have a machine, but for
Mm,
us, we like the the art part of it with both the roasting and the coffee brewing. So it and it goes back to the simplicity of not making it scary and not getting too uptight about it's just my husband always says, "It's just coffee, man. You don't have to make it into anything bigger or littler or fancier or not. It's just coffee, man.
It's the digital watch, analog watch analogy. I have had both. And, the new smartwatches are neat with all the tricks and the messages and, all the doodads and everything. But every now and again, it's nice to just put on a simple dial that tells me the time. And,
Yes,
and that's it. And so I think there's a world for both, but I don't,
absolutely.
and the automatic stuff is fine because sometimes I don't have time to make this an art. I need a
You
cup of
betcha.
coffee because I got to go. But there's also times when I want to slow down and really enjoy what I'm doing, not just the end result, but the process.
Yes. And so for 20 years, we've seen this tick up, this movement toward the processing and
Hmm.
the more digitizing of coffee.
Yeah.
But we're also, I think now we just kind of stayed in our lane there as far as simplifying. And I think now it is there's more of a push maybe, or at least a small push toward that slowing down, and we're part of it.
The pendulum is kind of swinging back towards the analog.
And yeah, but I don't know that it's gonna stay there. It's like you said, this we're
Mm,
not gonna slow down, so somebody's still gonna want the next biggest, fastest, brightest, shiny thing.
sure.
Um, but there's a few of us that are kind of used to the slowing down, like it. That old
Mm.
school way of doing things is kinda nice.
If someone wanted to follow in your footsteps and kind of get into this line of work or just business in the service industry, I guess, product service like you have, what types of soft skills do you think would benefit them the most?
Um, People skills is one. I do a ton, like, I go into business classes at high school, both, like, Monett, Mount Vernon, and we do, like, little talks with these kids. And I say that kinda stuff all the time. You gotta be able to be able to deal with people, talk to people eye to eye. That goes from customer service, but
Hmm.
also dealing with banks, being able to deal with, distributors, people that you're buying things from. And you gotta have a working knowledge of, basic computer skills, basic, math, reading, etcetera. But I think that if you and you have to be willing to change your mind. You have to be willing to, be resilient and not too set in your ways. I mean, as far as soft skills, they
Hmm.
just being willing to learn, constantly being open to learning more and realizing no matter how much knowledge you always have something to learn.
I have an opinion, it's just mine, but when when I see a younger person that can look me in the eye and carry on a conversation and communicate effectively, I'm always leaving that conversation convinced that that person is going to go further than their counterparts from that simple skill alone.
Yes,
And in
I'm
customer service,
exactly the same.
that's got to be at the top with customer service.
It is with customer service, but it just seems that's a lost art. And it when it become and customer service has become a lost art.
Mhm.
That's one of those things that for you to be able to go, out to eat or go anywhere and feel like you walk out having had a positive experience when you bumped into somebody that whatever it was, from going to Lowe's, to going to a restaurant, to going to the bank, it's rare. We accept mediocrity in those roles of
Yeah.
customer service now because it's just lost. So when someone does what you said, makes eye contact, is able to hold a conversation with you, we're impressed by that. And I think it's only that is going to become more and more prevalent. So
I try and
you're gonna
tell
need it more.
Yeah, I've got 2 teenage boys, and I try and tell them, if you can just learn to effectively communicate, you are gonna go so much further
Yes.
with effort, and those 2 combinations, I think it's pretty easy to separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, and staying humble, and
Yeah,
that's where you realize, "Hey, I don't know everything," or, "Whoops." I always say to my staff, "You've gotta own it. I don't expect you to be perfect, but I do expect that when you make a mistake, you say, 'Gosh, that was me,' and
yeah,
then you work to not make the mistake again." And those things all teach your teenagers that too, because that especially with teenagers, oh,
mhm,
they just don't think that they don't ever wanna to be responsible, and I don't
yeah.
either, but man, you gotta learn that part.
Do you think that is business similar to life where if you don't maintain your humility, life will just hammer you down from time to time to make sure you're reminded that you need to stay humble? Does business kinda do the same thing?
At least small business. I
Yes.
can't speak because I you see business owners on TV all the time, and there's no humility there at all, so
Yeah.
I don't know about big business, but I think small business, or I think that you'll be in business, but it won't be for very long
Where
if you're not humble.
Yeah. Is there a career that if you could go back and I think I'm gonna eliminate this question because everybody I talk with is so passionate about what they do that I don't think there's another career that they would even entertain, but when you were younger, I know you talked about the literature and things of that nature, but was
Uh-huh.
there ever a career that you almost stepped into and then you just ended up where you're at now?
Not really. I'm one of those people that I'm like, you just live and life will bounce you around to
Mhm.
where you need to be. So you're going to go this direction for a little while. So I wanted to write books and maybe be a teacher, but then I kind of dipped my toe in both of them, and I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I can't. I'm a people person, so I can't be sitting writing books, and I can't, and then it just shoved you along and until I was in the coffee industry, and I I don't even know that I, like, loved it and was like, "This is what I wanna do for the rest of my life." It just was it was fun for the time,
Mhm.
and so I did it for a little while, and then I did other stuff, and then opportunity. So, no. I would definitely wouldn't change where I am. It's good, my life is good, and my business is good, and I also think that's also a business owner, they're not if you're a negative person, you'll just get stuck, and,
Yeah.
your business will there's always something to complain about and always something that's not going right. Um, I just choose to not look at that generally.
What's next for Keen Bean Coffee and for Daryl and Tracy? What's on the horizon? Anything big, or are you content with where you're at and you're just gonna keep chugging along?
You know what? We are constantly and this is a beauty also of having our kids involved. Um, Old people, 55-year-old, 60-year-old people, we're not the cool we think we're cool, but the world doesn't necessarily think we're cool. So getting fresh ideas and thoughts from our kids who are like-minded thinkers,
Mhm.
but they're, 20 and 30 years younger than us. That is what Keen Bean will be in the future. It is us we're constantly growing and changing. So I really no big plans, no great huge I don't wanna be, opening the 12 shops. I don't think any of us want to do that, but we are always thinking of what would be fun. What's another way that we can bring money in?
Hmm.
What next? Kinda thing. So, I'd say we're gonna be chugging along, but it won't be the same because none of us sit still very long, and none of us we like change. Change is good. I They get mad at me at the coffee shop because 'cause I'll rearrange, and my customers are like, "Why are you moving it around?" I'm like, new perspective. I just
Yeah.
wanna see if you're stuck to the chair or the location. Where are
Mm.
you gonna go? So, yeah, new fun things, but nothing in particular.
If someone wanted to swing by your shop, where can they find you? Or if they wanted to order coffee, where can they do that?
So our shop is 1031 South Market in Mount Vernon, Missouri. It's right on the main drag coming through town.
Hmm.
And we're open 6:30 to 6:30 Monday through Saturday. And then from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we do live music on the patio and have patio drinks and beer and wine
Mm.
on Friday night. So we're open until 9 on that on in the summertime. And then www.keenbeancoffee.com. You can order beans, 12-ounce bags,
All right.
made done with the hands of the people who've been doing it since we started.
Right on.
Yeah.
I could talk about coffee all day long, but you got a business to run, so I better let you get back to it. But I really am grateful for taking the time today to educate me on your business, and it was just a blast to talk about coffee like this.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's always fun.
I know it. I'll swing by your shop sometime, and I'm going to pick up some coffee. That I promise.
Definitely do. Coffee on me. Let me know when you're coming.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
You betcha. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of the Jobs Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you found that interesting. As always, I wait until the end of an interview to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. I feel it's important that I earn that support from you. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next one.